Have you ever looked at certain families and just wondered, how do they stay wealthy for, well, forever? It seems like their fortune never runs out. Well, today, we're going to pull back the curtain on one of the most powerful and secretive tools the ultra-wealthy use to build fortunes that can literally last for generations.
So, just for a second, let's play a little what if. What if you could build a fortune not just for you or your kids, but one that could support your family for hundreds of years, all while being legally shielded from taxes? I mean, it sounds like something straight out of a movie, right?
Well, believe it or not, it's not science fiction. It is a very real, very powerful legal structure known as a dynasty trust. The easiest way to think about a dynasty trust is like it's the ultimate financial time capsule. You take your most valuable assets, stocks, real estate, cash, you name it, and you place them inside this special box. Then you lock it. And inside that box, those assets can grow and be passed down from generation to generation to generation without the government taking a massive bite out of it in estate taxes every single time. It's built for one purpose, and one purpose only: preservation.
Okay, so how does this quote-unquote magic box actually work? Let's pop the hood and take a look at the engine inside. What are the mechanics that make it so incredibly powerful?
So, in theory, it's a surprisingly simple three-step recipe. First, the person creating it, they call them the grantor, sets up the trust, and this is the most important part, they make it irrevocable. That's a fancy word that just means once the rules are set, they can't be changed. They're basically set in stone. Second, they fill it up with assets. Now, this is usually the one and only time that a gift tax might come into play. And third, a professional trustee gets the keys. They manage everything and hand out money to the heirs exactly how the original creator wanted. And this is where you really see the power. Let's think about direct inheritance like a bucket of water. You pass it to your kids and boom, the IRS spills about 40% of it on the ground. They pass what's left to their kids and boom, another 40% of that is gone. That bucket gets emptier and emptier. With a dynasty trust, you put the full bucket inside a sealed container right at the start. It might get a little spritz of tax once, but after that, the full bucket gets passed down the line, protected from those massive spills. And get this, it's also shielded from things like lawsuits or a messy divorce. It's a level of protection your regular inheritance just can't offer.
But here's the thing you gotta understand. The trust itself is just the vehicle. It's like the body of a Formula One car. The real secret to its unbelievable speed and power, well, that comes from the incredibly sophisticated engine they put inside it, the strategies they use to supercharge the whole thing.
This quote, wow, it's incredibly blunt, and it comes from a former top economic advisor to a US president. It says everything you need to know about the mindset here. For the financial elite, the estate tax isn't seen as a mandatory bill you have to pay. It's seen as an optional one. The tools to legally get around it are so common and so effective that in their world, not using them is basically seen as a financial blunder. And this right here is one of the most powerful tools in their entire toolkit. It's called an intentionally defective grantor trust, or IDGT. The name sounds kind of weird, right? Defective? But that defect, that's its superpower. So here's the trick. For estate tax purposes, the government agrees the trust is a separate thing. But for income tax purposes, it kind of pretends the assets still belong to you, the creator. So what does that mean? It means you pay the annual income taxes out of your own pocket, which leaves all the money inside the trust to grow completely, 100% untouched by taxes. It's like a garden that gets all the sunshine and water it needs, but the weeds are never allowed to grow. The compounding is just insane. And if you want to see just how explosive this can be, just look at this. Now, this is a hypothetical example. It's based on a report from Americans for Tax Fairness, showing how someone like Elon Musk could have used this exact strategy. By selling early shares of Tesla stock to the trust, all of that incredible, mind-boggling growth, from a few million to over $21 billion, it all happens inside that tax-proof box. So what's the end result? A fortune large enough to fund a family for centuries, all created in a way that legally sidesteps estate and gift taxes forever. And the really mind-blowing part is that the IDGT is just one tool in a massive workshop. I mean, they've got things called GRATs, which are basically a heads I win, tails we tie bet you make with the IRS on whether your assets are going to grow. You've got ILITs, which are trusts designed to hold enormous tax-free life insurance policies. And then you have valuation discounts. These are complex but legal ways to argue an asset is worth less than it really is, just to lower that initial tax bill. It's a whole ecosystem of financial engineering, all designed for one single purpose: to keep wealth intact. But, all these complex strategies and these gigantic numbers, they bring up a really interesting question. Once you've figured out how to make wealth last forever, You then have to decide what that actually means for the people in your family. And this is where the whole conversation gets very, very human. You'd think that after going through all this trouble, the main goal is just to hand over a giant pile of cash, right? But here's a fascinating twist. A study from Merrill Lynch found that 2 out of every 3 wealthy parents are actually worried that a huge inheritance will do more harm than good. They are genuinely afraid it's going to destroy their kids' motivation and their ambition to make something of themselves.
So, to try and solve that problem, a lot of these trusts are designed with, let's call them, strings attached. They are not just open checkbooks. They're often set up as incentive trusts. What that means is, the kids might only get money if they achieve certain goals, like, say, graduating from college or holding down a full-time job. Some trusts will even match the income their heir earns on their own. It's all designed to avoid what's known as the lottery effect, where someone gets a huge pile of money they're not ready for and it just vanishes in a few years.
Now, you need to understand, all of this isn't just some abstract financial theory. It is happening at a frantic, almost desperate pace right now. There is a massive, ticking clock that has the undivided attention of every wealthy family and every estate planner in the entire country.
So here's what's going on. A massive tax break that was passed back in 2017 is about to expire. Right now, in 2025, a married couple can pass on almost $28 million completely tax-free. But on January 1st, 2026, that giant exemption is scheduled to be sliced pretty much in half.
This has created a monumental use it or lose it deadline. And it's exactly why there is a mad dash right now for wealthy families to get these trusts set up and lock in today's historically high exemptions before that window slams shut. It is a full-on sprint to the finish line, and it's all being driven by a single date on the calendar. So at this point, you might be thinking, okay, that's really interesting for billionaires, but what on earth does this have to do with me? Well, it turns out that when we're talking about this much money being moved completely outside of the traditional tax system, it has an impact on every single one of us. The scale of what we're talking about is almost impossible to wrap your head around. According to an estimate from the group Americans for Tax Fairness, these dynasty trusts could allow the ultra-rich to avoid paying $8.4 trillion in taxes over the next couple of decades. And just to try and put a number that big into perspective, think about this. That one single sum is more than enough money to pay for major social programs like the expanded child tax credit for decades to come. This is exactly why it sparks these huge, passionate debates about tax fairness and what our priorities as a society really should be. It's about what that money could otherwise be used for. And this goes way beyond just the tax dollars. Critics argue that when you allow wealth to be preserved and concentrated like this for generations, you're also concentrating an immense amount of economic and political power in the hands of just a few families. And unlike public companies, they operate with almost zero public oversight. This really touches on one of the biggest, most important debates of our time, the relationship between wealth, opportunity, and the kind of society we all want to build for the future. There are no easy answers to any of this. It's complicated. But understanding how this system actually works is the first and most important step. It really forces all of us to ask a huge question. If wealth can be made to live forever, what does that ultimately mean for the rest of us? I'd genuinely love to hear your thoughts on this. Let me know down in the comments, what was the most surprising thing you learned about dynasty trusts today?
Wow, that was something, right? But don't go anywhere, there's more coming, and it's gonna make you think in a whole new way. Quick reminder, if you like learning cool stuff without the fluff, subscribe now. You won't regret it.
All right, let's talk about AI, but I want you to forget everything you think you know. Forget the sci-fi movies, forget the chatbots that write poems. We're about to dive into a massive, fundamental shift in how businesses are built and run. This isn't happening in the distant future. It's happening right now. And it's creating a totally new kind of entrepreneur, the Agentic Commander. Just let that sink in for a second. That's not a 10-year leap, that's a 2-year jump. We're going from AI as a kind of helpful intern to AI agents being the entire C-suite. That jump, from a simple tool to a fully autonomous workforce, is happening so much faster than anyone, and I mean anyone, ever predicted.
So, what on earth is this new world gonna look like? Well, picture this. It's run by one person, a single Agentic Commander. But here's the twist. They're not managing a team of people. Nope. They're orchestrating what you could call a ghost workforce. An army of AI agents handling everything. Sales, coding, marketing, you name it, 24/7, and they never ever ask for a coffee break. Okay, I know what you're thinking. If this AI is so incredible, why isn't every company on the planet already run by a single person from a laptop on a beach? It's a fair question, right? And the answer is, there's this huge invisible roadblock that's holding this whole revolution back for most people. And that roadblock, that invisible barrier, it actually has a name. It's called the AI overhang. So let's pull back the curtain and see what this is all about, because understanding this is absolutely key. So the AI overhang is basically this giant canyon between what AI is truly capable of and how you and I are actually using it today. Come on, be honest. For most of us, it's a glorified copy and paste machine, right? We use it to jazz up our emails. We're barely scratching the surface. It's like owning a Formula One car and only using it to get groceries. For any serious business trying to close that gap, the biggest problem, the real showstopper, is reliability. Or more specifically, this nasty little gremlin called compounding failure. It's what happens when you try to get AI to do more than one thing in a row. And check out this number, because it's going to blow your mind. Let's say you build a 20-step workflow, and you make each step 95% accurate. That sounds amazing, right? Like an A+ on a test? Well, you'd be wrong. The odds of that entire 20-step process finishing perfectly without a single hiccup is only 12%. 12! You can't run a lemonade stand on those odds, let alone a real business. So why does it fail so often? Well, it's because these AI models are designed to be creative, a little bit random even. And that's a feature, not a bug. You want that creativity. But your business needs the exact opposite. It needs predictable, reliable, deterministic results. The same input has to give you the exact same output every single time. It's like you're trying to get a jazz musician to play the same 4 notes over and over perfectly. It's just not what they're built for. So if that's the problem, how do we fix it? How do you actually bridge that gap and make AI dependable enough to run a company? Well, that's where we get to the good stuff. That's where the Commander's playbook comes in. The whole challenge boils down to this. How do you turn that creative, unpredictable artist into a reliable, consistent workforce? And the secret isn't to try and change the AI. No. The secret is to fundamentally change how you give it commands. And here is that secret. It's called the DO framework, and it is brilliantly simple. First, you give the AI a clear directive. That's the what. I need you to accomplish this mission. Second, the AI handles the orchestration. It acts like a brilliant manager, the thinker. It strategizes, it plans the best way to get it done. But, and this is the absolute game changer, it doesn't do the actual work. For the final step, execution, it delegates the tasks to simple, 100% reliable little snippets of code, the doers, that literally cannot mess it up. I mean, this code just nails it. You use the AI for what it's best at, its brain, for judgment, for strategy, for decision-making, and you let boring, old, predictable code handle all the heavy lifting. You separate the thinker from the doer. It's that simple, and it's that powerful. The benefits here are just massive. It's faster. It's way more reliable. And believe it or not, it's cheaper because you're only firing up that expensive AI brain when you really need its judgment. You're effectively promoting your AI from just a tool into a full-blown manager who's delegating tasks to its perfectly obedient workers. And that is how you start to see these companies hitting insane 95% operating margins. They've figured out how to make the cost of labor practically zero.
Now, I really need you to understand, this isn't just some clever productivity hack. This is bigger than that. What we are looking at right now is the actual blueprint for a brand new industrial revolution, one that's going to be powered by intelligence itself.
And if you're sitting there thinking, oh, that's just some futuristic fantasy for startups in Silicon Valley, I need you to think again. The biggest companies in the world are already stampeding in this direction. This is a corporate reality, right now. Look, don't take my word for it, just look at the data. A huge report from IDC predicts that by 2026, we're talking just around the corner, a mind-blowing 90% of the world's top 2,000 companies will be augmenting their teams with this kind of automation, and they're expecting a 30% jump in efficiency because of it. So let's be absolutely clear. This is not a niche trend. This is a global, tectonic shift in how work gets done. So the real question isn't if this tidal wave is coming, it's already here. The only question is, where are you going to be standing when it hits? Which brings us to the most important part of this whole conversation. Let's forget the big corporations for a second. Let's talk about you. In this new world that's coming so fast, what is your role going to be?
I love this quote from the source material because it's just so blunt and so real. It cuts right through all the noise, doesn't it? The jobs of the future, the valuable careers, they're not going to be about doing the tasks. They're going to be about designing and building the automated systems that do the tasks.
And really, that's what it all boils down to. It is a simple, stark choice that every single one of us is facing right now. You can either be the person who orchestrates the automation, or you will be the person who gets automated. There is no middle ground. So I'm going to leave you with this question, and I really want you to think about it. In a world where an entire company can be run by a single commander and their ghost workforce, what unique value do you bring? When the agents can do almost everything, what will be your job?
Wow, that was something, right? But don't go anywhere, there's more coming, and it's going to make you think in a whole new way. Quick reminder, if you like learning cool stuff without the fluff, subscribe now. You won't regret it.
All right, let's get right into it. There is something absolutely massive happening in the world of finance right under our noses. We're talking about a multi-trillion-dollar shift, one that people are calling the next evolution of markets. It's the tokenization of real-world assets, or RWAs. And trust me, by 2026, this is going to change just about everything. You know, just think about it for a second. The basic wiring of our financial system, it was designed decades, even a century ago. When you buy into a fund today, your money travels through this clunky old chain of banks, agents, and databases. It's a system where it can take days for a simple investment to actually settle. It's slow, it's expensive, and honestly, it's ancient technology.
So what's the fix? Well, the biggest names on Wall Street are pushing the solution, move it all on chain. What does that mean? It means they're using blockchain technology, yep, the same stuff that powers crypto, to create a single, super efficient and transparent record for real-world things, like bonds or loans or even entire buildings.
And let me be clear, this is not some small, nerdy experiment. In March of 2024, BlackRock, the largest asset manager on the planet, launched its first tokenized fund on a public blockchain. It's called BUIDL, and its assets, they just blew past $2.4 billion. Look, when a company that manages trillions of dollars makes a move that big, you know the game has fundamentally changed.
And that brings us to the big question, right? The most important question. What does all this mean for you, for me, for the average person? Is this new tech going to finally open up the financial world for everyone? Or is it just a better, faster engine for the rich to get even richer? That's exactly what we're going to unpack.
Okay, so let's pull back the curtain and look at how this stuff actually works. The word tokenization gets thrown around a ton, but what are we really talking about when it comes to a physical, real-world asset? At its heart, the concept is pretty straightforward. You take an asset that exists in the real world, you know, a US Treasury bond, a business loan, a painting, and you create a digital token that represents ownership of it. That token lives on a blockchain, which means it can be bought, sold, and sent around the world almost instantly. Now, here's a really critical distinction you need to understand. Most of the early projects were what we call digital twins. The token was basically just a digital mirror of the real asset. The actual legal ownership was still stuck in some old school database. But the massive shift happening now is towards digital natives. This is where the token is the legal asset. The blockchain becomes the one and only source of truth for who owns what. And that is the real revolution. So how do you even get one of these things? Well, the process is kind of a blend of the old world and the new. You still have to do all the normal identity checks, KYC/AML, just like with any investment. You wire your cash. The company issuing the fund, like BlackRock, takes that money and buys the actual asset, let's say US Treasury bonds. Then they mint or create new tokens that represent your slice of the pie and send them right to your digital wallet. So why bother with all this? Well, the benefits are just immense. We are talking about markets that are open 24/7, 365. Transactions that settle instantly. They call it atomic settlement, or T+0, instead of taking 2 or 3 days. Every single transaction is on a public record for anyone to check. And all this efficiency means that funds don't need to keep as much dead cash sitting around, which means more of your money is actually put to work.
Okay, so we have this incredible technology. It promises speed, efficiency, and access. But who actually gets an invitation to the party? This, my friends, is where the story gets a little complicated.
I mean, this is the dream, right? The whole idea of fractional ownership. The idea that you or I could invest just $100 and own a tiny piece of a skyscraper, or get into a private credit fund or a venture capital portfolio. These are assets that have always been locked behind a gate, reserved for only the wealthiest people.
And here is the cold, hard reality check. The blockchain, it can absolutely slice up a skyscraper into a billion little pieces. The technology is there. It's ready to go. The problem is, our financial laws were written decades ago for a world that simply doesn't exist anymore. See, most of these tokenized funds are legally considered securities. And in the US, to protect investors, the law restricts who can buy them. One of the highest hurdles is the qualified purchaser rule. To clear that bar, you need to be an individual with at least $5 million in investments. That's not exactly your everyday person saving for retirement. So the most important thing to get here is that this isn't a technology barrier, it's a legal one. Whether you're looking at the SEC's rules here in the States or Europe's big new framework called MiCA, that stands for Markets in Crypto Assets, the regulatory hoops are just huge. So big companies like BlackRock, they're playing it safe. They're only opening the doors to people who are already inside the club. And you don't have to take my word for it. This quote from a recent academic journal just says it all. Instead of tearing down the old walls, the way tokenization is being used right now is in danger of just digitizing them, making them stronger. It's reinforcing the very inequalities it has the power to erase.
But here's the kicker. Even with these very real barriers, the momentum behind this whole movement is it's undeniable. The amount of money to be made and saved is just too big for anyone to ignore.
Let's just look at the numbers for a second, because they're absolutely wild. Right now, in 2025, the market for these tokenized assets is about $33 billion. But the projections? Analysts are saying that by 2030, that number could hit $2 trillion. That is an explosive level of growth. We are standing at the very beginning of a massive wave of capital pouring on-chain.
And this timeline really shows you how fast this is all happening. Let's walk through it. Back in 2021, Franklin Templeton was one of the early pioneers. Then, the game changer, 2024, BlackRock jumps in, which was like the ultimate green light from the establishment. Now, in 2025, the market's over $33 billion, mostly built on safe stuff like US Treasuries. And the forecast for 2026? A massive convergence, where the line between DeFi, decentralized finance, and TradFi, traditional finance, starts to get really blurry. All of which brings us right back to our central nagging question. Now that we've seen how it works, who gets to play, and where it's all going, what's the final verdict here?
You know, this quote just gets right to the heart of the whole conflict. This technology was born from this dream of a new, open, fair financial system. But to get the big money, to get legitimate, it has to play by the rules of the old system. And when it does that, it's at risk of losing the very thing that made it so revolutionary in the first place. So at the end of the day, that's the question we're left with. The technology itself is an incredibly powerful tool. It can bring efficiency, transparency, and access. But a tool is only as good as the rules that govern it. As this RWA gold rush picks up speed into 2026, the real story to watch is whether the system being built will open the doors for everyone or just build a faster, stronger digital fortress for the world we already have.
Thank you for spending time with us here at the Violet Vault. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, stay focused and keep growing.